You're the human lie detector. So people will leak out their real emotion. When we lie, our heart's going to race, we're going to sweat, and our pulse will go up. When I worked on the Prince Andrew interview,
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady.
There must have been 150 red flags in that interview.
Wow.
Clinton, I did not have relations with that woman. He's not used a contraction, and he used distancing language. A lot of people don't want to know if the partner's cheating.
Yeah.
Be honest, you're cheating on her left, right and centre, aren't you? And he went, what? You can blag the system. And it's generally people with personality disorders, people with what we call psychopathy. They say that Trump's a psychopath. I think one of the most scariest people that I've analysed is a woman called Eileen Warnos. Her eyes would just freak you out.
Is there someone you could think of that you would say, you think that person is a very good liar?
You've got to mention Boris, haven't you? I mean, he's not a particularly good liar. The stats say that 1 in 5 people blag a CV a little bit. Not only had he had nothing to do with that particular project, they'd never heard of him.
Wow. I'm going to interrogate the Human Lie Detector. This is the man who can identify any liar. Okay, Darren, so the first thing I wanted to ask you was, because obviously what you do is very interesting and somewhat unique. Sure. When you meet someone and they ask you, what do you do for a living? How do you answer that question? I imagine it's not the easiest question.
Do you know what? Of all the interviews I've done, like, no one's ever asked that question.
Really?
So, honestly, yeah. Would I lie to you? No. Yeah. So, yeah, I kind of say I'm sort of a psychologist, or
right.
I'm sort of a body language expert. Because it reminds me of when Darren Brown was asked the same question. He says, "I'm sort of a magician."
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of, I think it leaves things open then, because then people think, well, what sort of?
Yeah. And if they keep going, is there like another, you have another little extra?
Yeah. Like... Well, I just kind of say, behavioural expert, body language expert, or sort of psychologist. Depends how deeply they want to delve straight away, but generally I just say I'm not a body language expert.
Yeah, and
so
then see if
work in media and stuff.
See if someone takes the bait, or if sometimes you just want to shut that down after that question.
It's like if they say, I'm a doctor, and what kind of doctor are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Doctor of philosophy. Because the assumption is there'll be a medical doctor, but...
Could be something different.
Yeah.
Okay, so body language expert, that's very interesting. How on earth do you get involved in that? I'd like to go back to the beginning, not necessarily, to child and stuff like that, but from when you started working in that field. How did you first get into it?
Sure. Well, I will dip my toe in childhood very quickly.
Go for it.
I was always one of the kids that was kind of forced into taking piano lessons at the age of 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So my passion even now is music. So the plan was to be like a classical pianist, or sort of like an Alfie Boe. Yeah. But when you kind of hit 16, 17, 18, you're into going out and various other things, aren't you? And life changes. I'd found that I'd always had a real affinity with people. I'd always found that I was able to sort of be quite a bit of an empath, really. Yeah. I was all sort of not psychic or anything like that, but very sort of being able to tune to people's emotions and things and help them. Now, back in the day, back in the 90s, there was a show called Cracker with Robbie Coltrane. He sadly passed away recently. And obviously he was this sort of like psychologist that was a bit of an alcoholic womanizer. So apart from that, I thought, he goes around helping the cops solve crime with psychology. So I thought, wow, that'd be interesting to study. So, when I came to sort of do A-levels and stuff, I ended up doing sort of psychology, sociology and English. And found that I really had a passion for it, really enjoyed it. And then when it came time for uni, I applied to do psychology. And just really had a great passion. Some aspects of it, like the methodology stuff of it was quite boring. Yeah. But the actual nuts and bolts of like social psychology in terms of, why people will comply with authority and, why people kind of do things without thinking, that kind of psychology that people love. And then basically, I ended up going to the prison service as a sort of trainee psychologist, because they were doing like your masters in forensics at the time. So I was there for quite a while, and then I grew to dislike it. Sometimes in life, you kind of just think, it's my time now. Right. And so I started looking around for something else to do, and I had a bit of time out, and I'd quite a lot of friends in the police. And even as a kid, our house was in the police, they call it a T-spot. It's where the cops that used to be on foot, not so much now, but if you were on foot patrol, we'd be like a a place you come and sort of have a cup of tea and kind of like disappear for an hour. So I'd grown up with police officers, really. So I ended up like applying for the police, and I got in, and so I spent quite a long time, just under 20 years, as an operational police officer, and obviously going to 999 calls. Unlike some forces like the Met, the forces up north tend to investigate everything. So whereas some forces would, you'd hand over your notes or your statement, and other people would then investigate. Whereas I was trained in sort of, we call it interviewing. I mean, the kind of sexy name is interrogation.
Right.
They tend to use that abroad quite a lot, but in terms of interviewing suspects. So I found really quite early on that I had a really good knack of having this gut instinct of when people were being dishonest, because I often say as a strapline that I spent most of my career dealing with liars, cheats and criminals. And then the funny part is then I joined the police. So by building rapport and trust on interview with suspects, you could pretty quickly decipher. Now, none of this was admissible, so I couldn't go to the line inspector or the custody sergeant and say, well, I don't think he's done it because X, Y, and Z, or I think they've done it because they caught a blink rate, because I wasn't really aware of any of this stuff really at the time.
It was just instinct at that point.
Yeah, because the deception detection stuff that I sort of have become known for, that's not really part of traditional psychology.
Yeah.
That's like, sort of CPD stuff. So spent a long time in that, and then 2010 I lost both my parents. Okay. So it was a bit of a real catalyst in life.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to really kind of reevaluate where I was going and what I was doing, and I'd pretty much done everything in the police. I was able to study various courses and things like that, and I'd always loved speaking and doing public speaking, and I'd been sort of mooching around for probably 6 months before I made the decision to basically leave the police. And this was 2010. This was a time when we had the general election coming up, with like Cameron, Clegg and Brown. And I'd started to put my feet in the water in terms of wanting to work in media. And I'll give him a credit. A guy called Steve McComish, a PR guy in Nottingham, he really came up with the whole branding of the Human Lie Detector.
Okay.
Because
I was going to ask you about that, where that came from.
There was a meeting in the business centre that I used to be based in, and I got talking to him one day at some networking event, and I said, look, this is what I want to do. Maybe there's some synergy there for you and I to do something, because I knew nothing about PR, nothing about marketing. Yeah. And he said, well, yeah, we'll have a chat then. So we had a chat, and he interviewed me, and he says, give me a few days, and then came back to me and said, you're the Human Lie Detector. I was like, right, okay. And this was a time Cheryl Cole had just been cheated on by Ashley.
Yeah. So
he says, I've got you, a newspaper wants to ask you about this footage. They've seen some stills. So I wrote about the body language. And then really from then, it was like turning on a tap. I wasn't paid anything, so it was for many, many, many years not being paid for this. And then more and more newspapers would say, we've seen such and such at the Oscars, or, we've got this particular politician. Can you, so it really just snowballed in the press.
Yeah.
And then from that, I got an email from a production company in Santa Monica, and they used to make various programs. One was called Storage Wars, where people used to bid on the storage units. Yeah. Anyway, they said, we want to get you out to the States and discuss a project we've got in mind. Yeah. So I was like, delete, scam. We've got $1 million in the bank, just send us your passport. Yeah. So a couple of weeks later, I'd managed to get an agent by then. He says, have you seen that email? I was like, which one? He said, the American thing. I was like, yeah, it's a scam. He went, it's not. So within about 3 weeks, I was sat in Santa Monica shooting a pilot.
Wow.
So that was just crazy.
Yeah.
So I spent quite a bit of time out there, back and forth, and then just really spent a great many years gaining experience, cutting my teeth, public speaking for companies. I ended up writing a book. Got a second one coming out soon, but I ended up writing a book as well about positive beliefs, and then just getting more and more TV work. And when I came back from the States, I think it was 2015, I had two goals in my mind. One was to be on the One Show and one was to be on This Morning within 12 months. Well, within a week, I was sat on This Morning.
Should try that trick again.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's coincidence or not.
Yeah.
But it was just absolutely shell shocked.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's anything sort of metaphysical about it, but there is some theories that what you think about, you bring about. So, and then from them, really, I've just been privileged to work in something that I'm really, really passionate about and meet some extraordinary people.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. It's funny how people get into the things they're into. Often they were doing something related but slightly different, like you were, and you just found you're like, this. I think I'm quite good at this. This is going quite well.
Absolutely.
I'm interested in this. I want to do more of it. And so yes, that's an interesting story. So are there lots of body language experts? Is there like an industry of them that perhaps aren't doing as much media stuff as you are, but have other applications in other fields of life?
There are other people doing the body language. There's principally 4 in the UK. I mean, I'm good friends with 2 of them. We sort of meet up probably twice a year. We were due to meet up last week, but it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
I think in terms of media, I mean, my friend Robert Phipps he was the original. Hi, Robert. He used to be on the Trisha show many years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
So he was like the kind of first TV body language expert. Lovely guy, very genuine, very humble. And because I thought certain people would be very territorial, very protective. Like me, I'll help anybody. That's my nature. Even if they're in the similar field, because there's enough work for everybody. I'm not into this, kind of climb up the tree and pull the rope up behind you mindset. That's not me. So yeah, I'm sort of good friends with the 2 other people. I think principally because the added bolt on with me is I've got the sort of police background, and then also the deception detection training that I've done. Because I also do not just media, I also work with police forces, aviation security, border force, and a couple of other agencies I can't mention. In teaching staff how to minimise risk, really. Which I can sort of talk about later.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I completely get what you mean in terms of that. You're not worried necessarily about competition. There's plenty around, and especially in a field where people aren't necessarily that familiar with it. If someone hires, let's say, a body language expert and has a bad experience, that's not going to help you out either. So it's much better to sort of share the love, as it were, and help each other out. And we have the same thing with marketing agencies.
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
have clients that have had bad experiences. You think, well, actually, it's better for all of us if you do a good job, not the way
definitely.
around. So,
I mean, I've got a colleague, Dr. Arthur Cassidy, who's a psychologist in Belfast. Like even last night, I was contacting my journalist and said, can you do a piece for me? And I just didn't have time.
Yeah.
I said, I can't do it, but I'll refer to my colleague and he can help you out. So, yeah, I'm very much into this this sort of synergy.
Yeah.
Because it's not all about me, it's about how we can help each other. Because, and it sounds, sometimes people scoff at it, but what you put out, you do get back eventually. I do believe that. I think if you're open-minded and prepared to sort of not be territorial, because there is enough work for everyone.
Yeah. So you mentioned a few sort of applications of your work that you do outside of the media side of things. Where else can this stuff be used? Like, I'm imagining, are there like billionaires that have someone shadowing them who watches every meeting and afterwards goes, they were a bit shady when they told you such and such product's going well, it's actually not. Do these sorts of things happen?
There is. I'm looking for, if anyone's watching and you're a billionaire, I'm in. I do have a friend that does something very similar to that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so they will go into a room. I mean, my new book's about sort of boardroom body language anyway.
Yes, okay.
I have to read the room. So, for example, if you're the CEO and you're in the board meeting and verbally someone's saying, that's a great idea, let's get behind that.
Right.
But then they suddenly go,
and
they flash disgust. So we'll obviously discuss that. So people will leak out their real emotion.
Yeah.
So it's certainly applicable for that. So I do consultancy for people. So either on a long-term basis or if they're going to a particularly important meeting, I'll just sit there as a silent observer and just read the room. And certainly in recruitment, before Zoom, before COVID, I mean, most things are done on Zoom now or Teams. But when people were going in for job interviews, the stats say that 1 in 5 people are prepared not just to blag a CV a little bit, to make blatant things up. So a lot of that was done certainly in banking and high level positions. And quite a few people were caught out.
I'll get back to my conversation in a second. Before I do, I've just got a very quick favour to ask, and that's to please click the subscribe button. Now, we want to make this the best show we possibly can, have the biggest and best guests on possible, and build the best possible community. For that, we need your help because we need subscribers. Now, currently, about 97% of people who watch the videos on this channel aren't subscribed, so please just take a few seconds, click that subscribe button, let's get back to the show. And they're just completely making things up on their CV.
So a quick example, I work with for a particular client, and they were recruiting for like a senior management position, like a £200,000 package. And they initially had like 10 candidates, and that got down to 2. So they said, right, we've got a panel of 3 interviewers. We've got 2 people. One's a female, one's an American guy who's moving to London. Both really, very good people. We wanted to analyse them. So part of the male's interview, he started talking about a project that he'd undertaken whilst in America, and it had raised all this money, and it wasn't he great? And but within the portion of that project he was talking about, there's a number of things that changed. So there's no device in the world, or nothing that I do is detecting lies. What I'm looking for is I'm very good at noticing very minute changes in emotion.
Right.
Because when we lie under pressure, not the kind of thing. I mean, this month, for example, that we're shooting in December, a few days before Christmas, people are 8 times more likely to lie statistically than any other month.
Is that because they're not telling their other half when they're getting presents and like white lies? I imagine. As
Basically. So it's no, these peas aren't like bullets; they're lovely. Or, it's great to see you to the in-laws. We say. So I love the present. That's fantastic, and you're never going to wear it. And these are just like the low-level stuff to avoid social embarrassment and awkwardness, really. But going back to the story, long story short, I said after the interviews, so once the candidates had left, they said, "Oh, we think he's the man. We think he's the one," and I was like, So there was about 4 or 5 what I call red flags within like a 90-second period of the interview when he was discussing this project. So lots of emotional shifts. So I said, when you do the vetting on this person, don't just do like a superficial thing. I want you to really zero in, especially on that project. So anyway, I was back in there like 6-7 weeks later, and I was speaking to the person that I dealt with, and they said, "Oh, just out of interest, remember that interview?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Oh, we gave it to the woman." I was like, "Oh, why?" They said, "Well, we contacted his previous employer. Not only had he had nothing to do with that particular project, they'd never heard of him."
Wow.
So he had worked in this particular genre, in this segment, so he knew industry knowledge, but he'd falsified like wage slips and all sorts. And
falsified wage slips. I mean, that's fraud, isn't it?
It's fraud.
Wow.
Yeah. So for companies, it's about minimising risk.
And
that's a massive practical application of deception detection. Because once you've, especially in these days of protected characteristics, once you've appointed somebody, if they suddenly say, "Well, you're only picking on me because of X, Y, and Z," even though you know that they've been dishonest, it's very difficult just to dismiss people without good cause. So for companies, they use a lot of this stuff.
Wow, that is a very extreme. But he's saying up to 1 in 5 are doing that. I've hired lots of people, and I've certainly had a scenario where once someone's actually in the role and you see the work that they're producing versus what they claim to have produced, you think something's not quite right there. And I wouldn't be able to zero in on what it was, but it's were they actually responsible for that, or were there other people in the team responsible for that they've then taken credit for? But I imagine it's interesting, in all the sort of business related content like consumer advice, I never hear anyone recommend, particularly for big hires, or I can imagine scenarios where there's a big deal about to happen, a big like a merger or an acquisition or something like that, hiring someone like a body language expert or a lie detection. That's the phrase, isn't it? Deception detection is what you're saying.
That's
either way. Deception detection expert to just give you that sort of probably that reassurance, and could be a bit of an expense that helps a massive avoid a massive mistake.
And what we say is these techniques, okay, they're not perfect, they're not 100%. However, that we generally say about 80% accurate.
Yeah.
Unlike, I think the polygraph that they tend to use in the past, and certain shows used to use quite a lot on TV. So very quickly, polygraph is a 100-year-old technology, which operates on the premise that when we lie, our heart's going to race, we're going to sweat, and our pulse will go up. But guess what? Innocent people do exactly the same, and we call it a false positive. So when I used to be driving down the road in my police car, and there's a car in front, and even though I've done nothing wrong, I'm sure people watching this, they think, oh, there's a cop car behind me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We've all done that, haven't we? Yeah.
So even to come to this interview, you sort of saw a police car behind me, thinking, oh, wow, is he going to stop me? I've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
So what people do is they'll end up getting stopped because they're so preoccupied with what I'm doing, they'll clip the curb or they'll clip a wing mirror, then get stopped and go, oh, I'm so sorry, and panic. So when people are tested on those machines, they can give off the same signals. So we have to be very, very careful. If companies, especially, I know they use it in the States quite a lot for employment, and the police tend to use it. But in my personal opinion, after sort of 20 years doing this stuff, it's not that accurate.
Right.
Whereas I'm looking maybe at 8 or 9 different channels of communication. That's just looking at 3.
Right. Okay. You were saying the polygraph. It's the heart rate, whether or not they're going to sweat, their body temperature.
Yeah.
Interesting. But there's a lot more other things that you can use to have more.
Yeah. I mean, now there's something called statement analysis.
Right.
Which was developed by a profile in America called Peter Hyatt, who's a very interesting man. So he's now discovered that it's not just what we don't say. Yeah. It's the way we phrase things. Right. So for example, when I worked on the Prince Andrew interview, if people want to distance themselves from a situation, they will say, rather than saying I did that and I did this, they'll say, well, we did this and we did that. I did not have relations with that woman. That being the distancing language.
The Bill Clinton phrase.
So he's sort of studied that as well now. So when people speak, it's not just non-verbal now; it's verbal as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So just going back maybe slightly where we were talking before, given what you do, and assuming someone gets past that initial question and they actually get to understand a little bit what you do, does that make them nervous? I mean, I can even feel myself. I feel like I'm extra conscious of my hand gestures and things like that, wondering, what's he reading into what I'm saying? I think
people do tend to sort of get a bit flummoxed, is the word I tend to use. Like certain networking things. I mean, I'm literally, they say intention drives attention, like driving a car. So I'm not walking into a situation thinking, right, let's read the room. I don't go in, because your mind would sort of, it's like blow a fuse really.
If you're constantly on all the
doing
time.
That, so I guess it's like a doctor. He's not constantly walking around thinking, oh, I wonder what's wrong with them. Do you know what I mean? So it's the same thing. But you do find some people will say, I think I mentioned to you before, when they often say, oh, it was really important, I wanted to make a really good impression, and I'll just make a joke of it and say, well, too late. So
you're in trouble already. I guess that's true in all walks of life, no matter, just like you give the doctor example, no matter what you're into. I imagine it might change someone's behaviour though if they were planning on lying. So I was just going back to that, thinking about that boardroom example. I can imagine, you said you sat in on boardrooms before and
sure.
stuff. Are people informed that you're going to be there or not? No. Because I could imagine it working one or two ways. If you wanted someone to not lie to you and you wanted them to tell the truth, you might tell them, look, we've got this person in today who's going to pick up on you lying, so you better not lie.
That's right.
Or you may also want to assess, is this just a dishonest person or something along those lines?
I think only once, probably out of 10 of those sorts of meetings, I think there's only one person that sort of like recognised me.
Oh, okay.
So because the more and more, things I do. But there's one person that kind of... So by them then knowing...
Did you see any panic when they were...
Okay. Not because we're lying, but they're just, a bit stressed,
okay.
So I guess it's like an undercover cop, if they're in the press, they're blowing the cover. So I think there will come a point when I probably can't do them too often.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Is that used as a technique when interviewing or interrogating people at the police? They'll say, look, we've got a so-and-so expert. He'll know if you're lying. You need to tell the truth.
They actually wouldn't be allowed into interview.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the main thing. That was the big one. We used to love Cracker. You know, he would go in and interview the suspect, which you're not allowed to do. So you've got to be a police officer to interview suspects. So you generally have their solicitor. There'd be two of you. So if it's you and I that were doing the interview, you'd either be doing the talking and I'd be sort of observing. Yeah. Not as a body language expert, but as your colleague, and I'd be writing things down. So we'd timeline what you're saying of your account of where you were in a particular place or something like that. So there would not be allowed anybody. So if I went to police now, I wouldn't be allowed to sit in on physical interviews.
Right. Okay.
Now,
because you're no longer involved. But you said you've done some work in terms of you're training people involved in various agencies to be able to do that themselves, as opposed to getting an external expert in. I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about what you do is I think everyone naturally thinks, how can I apply that to my own life?
Absolutely.
Like, how can I catch people out? I mean, the obvious one to me is interviewing. We've already talked about in terms of I've interviewed a lot of people, and I think early on, and when I should clarify, obviously we're doing an interview right now. When I'm talking about interviewing right now, I'm talking about interviewing for hiring positions.
Yeah,
that's what I should have stated that up front. But I mean, talking about interviewing for hiring for positions, and early on there were definitely times where I couldn't have known any sort of signals or any of the knowledge you have, but I just got a feeling of like, I'm not sure something's quite right here. And then you look at the CV and you think, yeah, but this person, they've got such and such and they're the best candidate. You go ahead to hire them, and then a few months later you're thinking, oh, that wasn't right. We've now got issues. Do you think people's instincts on this stuff are good and should be trusted? Like if you get the ick with someone, that's a good sign.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, statistically they say that without proper training, because a lot of like my ex-colleagues say, oh, I'm good at this, so I could do what you do. Get me on the telly. And without proper training, it's been proven that statistically people are no better than actually a coin toss. So it's more like 50-50.
Right.
However, I would agree with what you've said, is that if people are quite intuitive, or in psychology we call it kinesthetic, they're in tune with people's emotions, then I think what I'd say is if there's a doubt, there is no doubt. If there's some niggly feeling that you've got, then I think you should always trust that.
Okay.
Now, the curse to this training is a lot of people don't want to know if the partner's cheating or if things are amiss.
Yeah.
I think it was read a stat like 27% of a sample of people that believe their partner was cheating said they wouldn't want to know, because obviously the ecology of that relationship breaking up, financial, children, whatever, they just don't know how they would continue.
Yeah.
So a lot of people just really live in silence.
Yeah. And I imagine also if people were to try and use a bit of this without being an expert, and they might get what you describe false positive, and they think, oh, is my partner cheating? And actually they've read something wrong, and that could end up with a nightmare scenario.
I mean, the big one is thing called eye accessing cues, which is people say to me, "Oh, I know all about that. It's when you look left and you go, you look
there and there."
But everyone's an individual, you see. Yeah. So they say that you're right-handed, aren't you?
Yes.
So when so
you've noticed that already.
So if I said to you now, just off the cuff, I want you to see a picture of your car in your head right now.
Okay.
Okay. So now for people watching this, you moved your eyes in a certain direction.
Right.
Okay. So if I ask you now to imagine maybe what your wife would look like with orange hair tonight.
Okay.
Okay. Your eyes will move. So you ask somebody a memory.
I did look there, and then I look slightly.
So you ask somebody something that's a memory.
Yeah.
And then you would note where they look with their eyes.
Okay.
And then it wouldn't be as blatant as saying orange hair. Yeah. But then if you ask somebody a question, which is probably a little bit more emotive, if they maintain the same eye pattern, then they're speaking from truth. But if they break the eye pattern, then that's a red flag, because it means that they've had to shift to a different part of the brain.
Right. Okay.
So generally, right-handed people, when they remember things, they'll tend to look to the left, either up or down, which you look to the side like that.
I looked to my left.
So you're looking.
I didn't even realise it.
Yeah, so you're accessing the part of your mind that deals with memory.
Right, yeah.
So because I asked you a question which diverted you to effectively make something up.
Yeah.
Not lie, but consider an abstract thought.
Okay.
Yeah, you had to shift Yeah. So in the course of an interview, you know, you would ask somebody, you'd ask some questions, and then you'd say, you know, so is everything that you've told me today, is everything completely truthful?
Right.
Because we always like to give candidates opportunity just to kind of clean up anything that we might have over embellished a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, if they're truthful, they'll generally remain constant. Whereas if they suddenly have even a slight hesitation,
right, okay.
It's that hesitation that kind of gives it away.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That was going to be my next question around like specific things I could do in an interview to ask. So I've never asked a question like that to begin with, but that sounds like a good idea to actually ask that question. And then you'd be looking for not necessarily someone looking in a particular direction, but if it's whether they change their patterns that they've been using previously. Yeah,
so this comes from something called NLP. I'm not sure if you've heard about that. Neuro-linguistic programming. Yeah. So traditionally, NLP would say right-handed people, when they remember memories, remember pictures, they'll tend to look up and left.
Yeah.
And if someone's remembering a conversation, they'll look to their ear. And then looking down the left will be their internal voice.
Right.
And then likewise, if you are making pictures up, if you're making something up, it's a visual thing, you'll shift to the right. Likewise, if you never had the conversation, I say, so what did you say to them? And you're just blagging it basically.
Yeah.
You'll generally, they say you'll look to that area. And if someone's responding more kinesthetically, so if they're more kind of gut instinct as an individual, they'll tend to look down and right. It means they're considering feelings.
Right. Okay.
So this is used not only in discovery and deception, but also building rapport. So if you have got a candidate in front of you that generally looks up and left for information, you can pretty much put a good bet on that they're very visual.
Okay.
So if you wanted to communicate to them and say, you know, do you understand the question, or is that okay for you? Rather than phrasing it like that, you could say, does that look all right?
Right.
Because you're matching the way they're processing it.
Okay.
Likewise, if they look to their ear to process the information, you could then think, right, okay, does that sound all right to you?
Right.
So you're almost matching. Okay. So if you guys that are watching, if you're having a job interview, if you notice the posture that the person interviewed has adopted, so you know, if you're interviewing me, if I adopted a similar posture to you, and then at some point in that conversation, I then shifted something subtly, and then you followed me, then that means that we've built trust, and we call that pacing and leading.
Okay.
So it's quite a powerful tool, not just in discovering if someone's been deceptive, but it's a powerful thing to do on dating.
So you could see if they're into you by doing something physically and seeing if they copy you.
Yeah. And again, with obviously I work on shows like Love Island and various things like that. And another interesting one for people to be aware of if you go on a date or something like that is the table you're sat at, maybe a coffee or dinner. If you imagine there's an invisible line down the centre of the table, if you were to put something like a spoon or your wine glass a little bit into the other person's half of the table, later on in the conversation, if you notice that the thing's still where you left it, it means that person's into you and that they're getting on more with you and they trust you. But if you miraculously find it's been pushed back over your side of the table, it means they've not got rapport with you.
And they're not thinking of that consciously, are they? That's fully subconscious from them, and they're just
because it's personal space. We suspend that kind of thing on just a number of reasons. There's one, like if we're on the tube. Where we've got no power over physical contact, or if we're sat in a lift, we'll look straight through somebody because for that moment in the lift, we don't like being that close to people. So that's just like an interesting indicator as to whether that person's happy for you to be close to them.
I was given a tip once to see if you're in a good group of friends, and they said to fold your arms and see if they copy you.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've done that a few times. I played like six-side football, and I remember doing that before a game once. I think I just heard it that day. We were just all stood round waiting for our game to go on, and I went and I folded my arms, and you just saw like every few seconds an extra person would do it, and then
it's like a Mexican wave.
Exactly like that. And then 20 seconds later, everyone's just stood there, folded their arms. I had a little chuckle to myself.
Definitely it works. I try it. I mean, the thing what I always say to people is, look, because I do what I do doesn't mean that I'm some big guru. Like, I've just followed the path of things that I'm passionate about. So these things are there for you to try right now. Go out and try them and have fun with them.
And see. But things like the dating example was very useful. You think, I quite like this person.
And it's quite.
Let's see if they are if they're into me as well. You might save yourself a lot of waiting for someone to reply to a message or a phone call or whatever. If you go, well, actually, I know they're not that bothered because they moved the spoon back, whatever.
Exactly. It was. See, for me, I love technology. Don't get me wrong, because we can FaceTime and all the rest of it, but it's in a large part of what I do. It's killing communication because. We've all been a bit obsessed with WhatsApp. They've read the message, they've not replied. Well, they read it 5 minutes ago. Now they're back online and they're not replying. People get all this self-obsession, don't they? Yeah. And there's no tonality. I mean, I sent a text once to my friend, nothing bad. And they're like, what do you mean by that? Because they've read it in a certain tone and I didn't mean it like that. Yeah. So it's quite, it can be a complicated business.
My wife always, she's in various like group messages and chats with me, and she always says, I'm so blunt on message. And she's like, I never think I am. I just think I'm just answering the question. She's like, well, you need to fluff it up and put emojis in. And I'm like, that seems like a waste of time. And I don't want to think about it and second guess it. But I guess without that stuff, it's quite difficult for someone I've just answered the question directly, and someone might take that as being a bit rude. Whereas they wouldn't if we were face to face, because they'd get the other signals that you've described. I
found that in America. I'm not sure if any Americans are watching, forgive me, but I would write emails and good day, be having a great day, and ask a question, and they'd reply yes. There was that was it. That was it. Yes, no, maybe, one line. Yeah. So I learned, always like match. You can match and mirror your emails to that person. Okay. So if they're a person that only writes 1 or 2 lines, there's no point you writing a big diatribe.
Yeah.
I've got a friend that sends messages, and they're a beautiful person and with a good heart, but they're like that, and I just just glaze over really.
Yeah. A top tip to anyone listening or watching to this: if you ever want like one of your favourite YouTubers to respond to a comment, do not write an essay, because they will just glance at that and go sorry and move on to. When there's just tons of them, you move on to the next one. You just can't. You just can't do it. It's got to be to the point if you want to get a chance of
definitely
having a response. Okay, so you've worked out that I'm right-handed. It's not something I've mentioned. Again, somewhat nervous to ask this, but obviously we've been chatting a while, and we had a chat before we started recording. Are there other things that you've picked up? Well, actually, there's 2 parts to this. There's other things you picked up about me now, and are there things that you can infer from that about my personality in general?
Yeah, I think. Again, some of it is cold reading as well. About cold reading where you can infer certain things. So I think you are like, even from like the way you're sitting and things like that, I think you're a confident person. When I say you're not quiet, but I don't think you're the sort of person who needs to be the life and soul of the party. It doesn't mean you're not a good host and things like that, but you don't feel the need that you have to be the centre of attention. You have an inner confidence. And I think people will tend to come to you for advice in terms of the way you come over, because I think you're quite, probably wouldn't rush into situations or rush into a decision. I think you would probably take a little bit of time to kind of consider before you make a decision. So I don't think you'd rush in and rush out and just say, yeah, there you go, boom. I don't know if that's correct or not.
That is spot on. That is absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. So even breathing, because people that tend to breathe a little bit slower, they tend to be more kinesthetic. So I think I would say you're a little bit of an empath as well. I think probably very intuitive in terms of other people's emotions.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure my wife would agree with that part.
They never do.
They never do. Yeah, she would say that I can not read situations sometimes. But I think a lot of what you described there I would definitely say is accurate. I definitely don't feel the need to be the centre of attention. I do feel I do take my time on decisions for sure. I'm one of those.
And I'm the same. It's like when if I go to say, I don't tend to go to a lot now, but if I went to like a networking event or something, people would go, "Oh, I bet you're there and doing this," and I'm not.
No, yeah.
I don't need. I'm actually. I did a Myers-Briggs test actually a few years ago, and I come over like quite introverted.
Yeah. Okay.
Now some people go, well, "That's mad. You stand on a stage in front of that." Yeah, but that's a separate end. That's the performance version of myself.
Yeah.
But the I'm not the person that needs to go in and just be.
No. It's a different personality, I guess. I've done a Myers-Briggs test and came across as quite introverted, but that's probably a part of my personality that's probably part of it that maybe was true then, and perhaps I wouldn't say is true now. I probably feel more extroverted, but I guess people change.
Yeah, we change, we evolve and stuff, but I think fundamentally we keep the same personality and same sort of value and belief systems.
Yeah. Yes. The same core stuff, but the edges might change. And I guess with things like you mentioned, confidence, a lot of that can be built over time, evidence to yourself that you've done things well, and that's going to change, and then that's going to come across when.
I mean, if you knew me at 20, I was literally so introverted.
Yeah.
I wouldn't speak to anybody. So I mean, really, my kind of education gave me the confidence and my passion for what I do, and even now, it's to walk onto. I mean, I did a gig before COVID happened in Prague, and I was booked to go in there. I was one of 5 speakers. It was a great gig, and there was about 4,000 people in the audience. Biggest audience I've ever performed to. But there was another guy there. I forgot his name now. But he came from America. I was talking to him, and he was quite high up in sort of marketing. I'll try and remember his name. And I was a little bit intimidated by him, not because he was not a nice person, but I thought, well, at least I'll get on stage, I'll do my bit, because I was first on stage.
Right.
Then he went, I've been Googling you. He says, I'm going to come in and watch your talk. I said, oh, great.
There's already 4,000 people there.
So I'm backstage, like looking through the thing. We've all got that little voice that goes, that's that kind of butterfly feeling. Yeah. But because, you know what, it's not like you've just rocked up and you don't know what you're doing. Because you know the material, because you're confident in what you do, you do know what you're on about. Within a minute, you're flowing.
Yes.
And even though I got some really nice feedback from the organisers, I'll tell you what, this guy made a gesture to me, the one guy I mentioned, and as I walked out, he went, and that meant the world to me.
Yeah. Do you know
what I mean? Because in his field, he's such a big fish,
Yeah.
And for him to get like that, it really meant a lot to me.
That's great. Yeah. So out of all the things you do, because there's so many things you mentioned, including that talking on stage, what's your favourite? What do you like doing?
I love speaking on stage, really.
So that was just described.
It's quite interactive. So it's kind of Darren Brown. I'm not a magician.
Yes.
But you can have quite a lot of fun with some of the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
Like I just did Crime Con. So like you get Comic Con. In London, and because when there's this sort of crime show on telly at the moment, I did a thing called Anything to Declare. So I've got this sort of bag of sugar which we simulate as a controlled drug, and we'll get 5 of the audience up, and then we'll do what we call a baseline. So we'll get them to talk about themselves and the audience. So then we'll say, right, put yourselves into like a little bit of a huddle. Decide who's going to be the drug smuggler, and then you'll come back to the audience, and one of you, I'll have this bag.
Yeah.
And even though it's not real, we have to simulate a forfeit.
Okay.
So let's have your watches, your phones.
Yeah.
So obviously not really, but we say if you get it wrong, we'll keep them. So it simulates a little bit of pressure, and then you'll get the audience to ask some questions like their customs.
Yeah.
And probably 7-8 times out of 10. The audience will get it right, just based on half an hour training. That's on YouTube if anyone wants to Google that.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I can imagine there's so many real-time applications for what you do. So on that on-stage element could be really fascinating.
So have a bit of fun with it, with a sort of serious topic. But the public speaking, even though through lockdown I was still busy on Zoom, it's not the same.
No. Yeah, it's. I've done that before where I can create a video and I know that it might be watched by 100,000 people, let's say, or I can be speaking on a stage even to 300 people.
Yeah.
And there's still such a different feeling with the 300 being there.
Absolutely.
As opposed to
you get that energy.
However many there may be online. You can
see what, like when I watched them with Julie Dench recently, and she just love every night's different.
Yeah. Especially if you're interacting with the crowd.
Yes.
I imagine there's always going to be different elements because you get different personalities and different people.
That's it. And you'll always get a heckler. Like it's like being a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
Like I was on like a low-level stage once, and it's an old joke, but this guy was quite cocky, and he was stretched out. And he put his feet on the thing. I said, "Oh, are you in show?"
On the stage.
Yeah, stretched out. I said, "Are you in showbiz?" He went, nice, well, get your feet off my stage then.
Okay.
You know, it's like good humour.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that banter.
Yeah. Did he act like a scolded sort of school kid, you know, been told? Or did he come back and be all
no, it was good. He was
okay.
fine.
Yeah.
I think he just had extra stress anyway. But
yeah.
It's again, you just meet some lovely people.
Yeah.
I think by and large, people just want a bit of fun. That's why I love the speaking.
Yeah.
Especially the big corporate gigs that they start off being quite stuffy and very reserved. I did a gig at London Excel about 4 or 5 years ago, and that was quite a lot of people. And I said, right, who's lied today? Right, with people like. And I went, if it's a no, you are lying.
Yeah. So you're lying about having not lied.
I said, I'll start us off. Like, someone's asked me for money as I got off the tube.
Yeah.
I said I didn't have any change, but I did because I wanted to keep my change. I'll start us off, and that was it then.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be the first one to say, yeah, I lied.
There does seem to be a movement now of people, you know, radical honesty, of people saying you should never tell a lie, and that just seems impossibly impractical.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
No, there's not. I mean, there's that famous film with Jim Carrey, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, he gets, if you've not seen it, I mean, it's people watching, he gets his kid puts a spell on him.
Yeah.
He's got to tell the truth for like a day, and he ends up getting arrested, loses his job.
Yeah.
Or, you know, he's a lawyer, so he can't lie in court. And
it's a particularly bad job, but just every time you go to the coffee shop, someone says good morning, you're not going to be like, well, no, actually, such and such is going wrong. And
how's your day?
That.
Well, let me tell you this. You know, so you're right. We again, of all the emotions that we exhibit as humans, so we can be happy, we can be sad, we can be angry, we can be afraid, surprised, and show contempt and disgust. The smile is the most faked emotion that we demonstrate as humans.
Really? Okay.
Because we do it when we're anxious, we do it when we're nervous, when we don't feel well. You know, people might say, I mean, I get migraines sometimes periodically, and you know, amount of times I've been at places and they go, oh, how's it going? I go, oh, I'm great, thank you. My head's really thumping.
Yeah.
But you know, the show must go on, as they say.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, the smile, and we also use that in deception, because if people are trying to convey the fact that they're happy to talk to you and they're not, and the easiest way to determine if it's a real smile is there'll be crow's feet here. So regardless of age, the whole face will engage. If it's
okay, so it's a real smile, you'll see.
Yeah, if it's a real smile,
the lines around the eyes,
they'll kick in.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like a fake smile, only the bottom half of the face will kick in, and you get this kind of Gordon Brown, who was a famous politician for those not in the UK.
Yeah. And
he was the worst one at doing a fake smile.
Even I've no idea any of this stuff. I feel like I saw that.
Yeah.
You go. When you said it's a fake smile, it just looked wrong. Just when he smiled, you're like, hang on.
Yeah.
Has he had some sort of jaw injury, or it just looked off whenever he was smiling? There's
also a great clip that I do when I do lectures with Trump, and if people Google it, you'll see it. He's in a press conference with the Japanese Prime Minister, who I understand was assassinated recently. But he's talking to camera now. Trump, he pulls a series of fake smiles to the press. Then he grabs his hand and taps it really condescendingly.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the disengaged handshake. But then the Japanese guy's going like this. He's crushed my hand because Trump used to basically use pressure to determine what kind of politician is this person going to be with me.
Really?
Because the first thing
the handshake.
Yeah. So one of the first things that he did when he took office, if you imagine, there was that bizarre photo of Theresa May walking around holding hands with him, which was a bit of a bizarre photo.
Yeah.
But one of the first things he did was he shook hands, and then he would pull the person towards him. Now, if they were pliable and going to be quite easygoing, they let themselves be pulled towards him.
Okay.
Whereas Trudeau, the guy from Canada, he was briefed. So when he met him on the White House steps, they ended up being this like tug of war, because that's again like power.
Right. Okay.
And then the other things that people be aware of is power gestures. So, if one person's going through a door, and that other person then gestures you to go first and kind of puts their hand on your back, that's seen as them trying to make you look weak. It's contextual.
Yeah.
But generally with politicians, they will tend to use that. Meghan uses that a lot with Harry.
Really?
Uses a power gesture.
Oh, wow.
So she's seen as a more powerful person.
Oh, wow. So Okay, so the Trump example, like I feel like as a person, I would probably, and maybe that says that I am pliable, because I would probably go with. I wouldn't look to fight it. Is that true? So he's doing that to assess whether or not someone is going to be easily swayed, let's say.
Yeah.
Would that actually translate to real life, do you think? It would? Okay.
Yeah.
So you think me being more likely to be dragged, I assume, would mean that I would be more likely, if I was a politician, to go along with what he suggested?
Yeah, I mean, you could be then you could be being aware of that now. You could be playing a bit of a strategy and think, well, what I'll do is I'll double bluff him. I'll let him think I'm going to do that, and then do a U-turn. So that's possible. That's plausible. Yeah. But at the time, I'm talking what was it, 2017 or 18 or something. If you watch the stuff back on YouTube, there's countless meetings and stuff. I mean, even when he was on the podium giving some awards away, you know, he was this military guy was being pulled from pillar to post with his handshake. And Putin tends to do this quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I could visualise both of those. Yeah. I've seen clips of handshake, and the person moves towards them.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I mean, I worked on, not so much now because of the war, but Russia Today, RT. Yeah. I used to work on that quite a lot. And the show with Kevin Spacey, House of Cards, there was a scene which was really mirrored out in fact by Trump and Putin. Because there was a scene where Kevin Spacey held his hand out to the Russian Prime Minister, and he just looked at him as if like, what's going on? And Putin did the same thing with Trump, because Putin was the only politician that Trump wouldn't try any tricks on.
Right. Okay.
If you look at Trump would always offer his hand out. We call that open palm gesture. With
the hand sort of angled upwards.
Yes, that's why even now the gesture of that. It means I have no weapons. It's a military term from centuries ago. Yeah. Where you'd say, you know, friend or foe, I have no weapons. Because when we show our open palm, it means that we're being truthful. Yeah. So sometimes people will use that to try and convey the fact they're being truthful. But generally, if people are talking like that, they are being honest with you. As opposed to maybe like this, or if they put their hands in the pockets, that's kind of a bit of a red flag as well.
Interesting.
Because animation's one of the first things that tends to go when someone feels they're going to be discovered. Because it's like you and I are quite similar in our gestures. Whereas if I'm trying to sell you a big lie and there's a big consequence, so let's say I work for you and you know I'm going to get sacked basically because you suspect we're doing something that's quite potentially not legal. My focus is going to be on you. On selling you the lie, right? So the hand gestures that we do and our breathing, that comes from the autonomic nervous system. It's automatic. Okay. So we don't have to think about breathing, or we don't have to think about what we do with our hands. But because I'm so focused on making you believe me verbally, what tends to happen is the brain goes into a state of something called detection apprehension. Okay. So it closes in and just focuses on that. And so you'll see a decrease in this thing called, we'll call it illustrators. You'll see a decrease in animation. So someone that's generally like this will end up sort of being like this. Okay. But then they'll overcompensate eye contact as well.
So they look straight at you, and then they're going to focus more on what they're saying to you to try and convince you they're telling the truth, and the rest of the stuff is the giveaway.
Because the truth, they always say, told the truth, it's the easiest thing to remember. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So everything else will operate as normal, but it's just that when the person's having to consciously, give a false account. Yeah. Like in interview, we used to say to the person, right, you've told us your movements for that evening, now do it in reverse. Right. Because your colleague would have written it all down as a timeline, and 9 times out of 10 they'd say, then I was at Burger King. No, hold on a minute. You said that you went to such and such before that. And then they'd start to get unravelled, you see. Yeah. Whereas an innocent person, like if someone said to me, where was you last Wednesday? I won't have a clue without checking. Whereas a person that wants to negate themselves from any wrongdoing, they'd go, where was that? 2:15. I was at Starbucks. Specific. Or I was at this place. Right. I would argue the average person, or if you said 2 weeks ago, wouldn't have a clue. No. So when someone's very specific, just a very quick one on the eye access, or the eye contact. Normally, Western world eye contact is 3 to 5 seconds. Okay. So if you and I look at each other in the eye now, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 feels about the right time to kind of look away.
Yeah. Naturally.
So there are the odd people in the world, Sajid Javid being one of them, that literally just, you don't blink.
Right.
It just thinks
stares straight at you. And even you just doing that, it feels intense. Like you immediately get a reaction to it.
So when people are talking normally, 3 to 5 seconds, and I always say, if someone prolongs eye contact, generally they're going to kill you or kiss you, right? so let me tell you why. So prolonged eye contact is generally reserved for our partners, romantic partners, like our kids, because you can look them in the eye, it doesn't feel weird because you're that close to them. Whereas liars, because they operate on the principle that what they think is liars can't look you in the eye, they will go against that and overcompensate.
Right, yeah.
But at the same token, when I used to be sat in the police van on a Saturday night with my colleagues, waiting for the pubs to kick out, the first level of aggression, not saying women never used to fight, but generally it's guys that come out the pub, and then you go, what are you looking at? And then, no, what are you looking at? So eye contact it's almost primeval.
Yeah.
So that's why I say eye contact's a big one. So if people overcompensate eye contact, that's always a kind of a red flag. Some people, you always get the odd, you'll always get the person that falls outside the norm.
Yes.
But by and large, you can negate that with other gestures. So we look at the person as a whole ecological system, not just, because when people say, I knew he was lying because he looked right. No, you've got to have about 8 or 9 different things that occur that break the baseline within a minute period to really have a good bearing to say that person's lying.
Because I imagine isolated things, there could always be other reasons for it.
Yeah.
Like he could have looked right because they saw movement and it just grabbed their attention.
Definitely.
Or something along those lines.
I mean, with the eyes as well, blink rate's a good one. So if someone starts to blink quite a lot.
Right.
Liz Truss was a great one for this.
Okay.
She started to blink when she had absolutely no confidence in what she just said to the media.
Oh, wow.
David Cameron would lick his lips and take a step back from the podium.
So is that when they're lying or something else going on there?
Well, allegedly.
Yes, that's good, yeah.
It's when they have no confidence in what they've just said. So,
right, okay.
I mean, a lot of politicians, it's like last minute, they'll be given figures and things to kind of convey at very short notice sometimes. So sometimes it can be that.
Right.
But a lot of the time it could be the fact that they're delivering something that they're not truly passionate about, or they don't truly believe in.
Right, interesting. So it's not just as simple as saying they may well be lying given the things you've seen, but there's got to be other things going on.
Yeah, you've got to say, right, eye accessing cues changed, the blink rate went up, because we're dealing with emotion, blood was taken away from the lips, fight or flight syndrome. That's always another one.
That's going to change the colour of the lips.
Very pale.
Yeah, okay.
So fight or flight really, it's again a medieval thing that if you're faced with a confrontation that you want to just run away, your body will obviously suck the blood and adrenaline into your legs so you can run. Likewise, if there's nowhere to run to and you've got to fight, that's why suddenly people will start to shake when the adrenaline. Yeah. So as a police officer, if I was going to an incident and then a lot of the times I'd say cancel, because somebody else had got there first. Right. Or the report of a big fight was a lie, Right. But you'd still have that adrenaline.
You could feel it. Yeah.
So by the 4th or 5th incident, that's why suddenly you're quite worked up.
I imagine that doesn't help about keeping a level head on the
and that's where, sometimes with some police officers you do get red mist. Yeah. Because they've got that adrenaline's got to go somewhere. I think
you often see it with riot police sometimes, don't you? You think they've been in that state now for hours and hours and hours.
Definitely. And if you're what we call public order, generally if you're on an afternoon shift, all the evening shift take the police car, so there's no cars in, so you'll generally go out in the van with public order or conveying prisoners back to custody. So, there's 4 or 5 of you in the van. And again, if you've had 4 or 5 jobs come in that I've cancelled, that's like you say, you'll go to the 5th or the 6th one that is real. Yeah. Some cops, I've seen, certain police officers probably behave as they shouldn't have. Yeah. Yeah.
And they've been in that state. So you mentioned around polygraph tests, 100-plus-year-old technology, that's rubbish. In my industry, everyone's AI mad at the moment. Are there AI programs that can can do this well, that can read body language, detect lies and things like that?
That's a great question, and I don't really know at the moment. I'm doing my research on this. I mean, it is getting pretty frightening now with all the AI stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I just played with it and said, write me a seven module course on body language in the style of Darren Stanton. And it just wrote it.
Wow.
And I thought, obviously you have to correct it with a few grammatical things, but yeah, it's getting scary.
And that's going to get better and better.
It's going to get better and better.
Yeah.
There is something that's been in operation for a number of years, not AI-wise, but it's called voice risk analysis software. Because another thing that people look out for is when people are stressed or lying, the voice pitch will go up or it'll break.
Okay.
Excuse me. So when you phone, say, an insurance company, or you phone up the Inland Revenue, or some government department, the way they ask questions is asked in such a way to get a baseline. So that there's actually software running on the phone line.
So those first questions where they're asking you for your name and just basic stuff like that. Yeah. Okay.
So that will create a baseline, and then they might ask a question. If you say your car's been broken into or something, and you've had your iPad stolen, they might say, do you believe this to be a real incident? So the average person will and it will flag it. So sometimes they may just be stressed, again, false positive, because they've been asked a bit of a question which is challenging their integrity.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the time it gets flagged for fraud. So people don't realise that's an operation.
And again, even if it's not 100% accurate, then it allows for further investigation. It's going to really save time later down the line.
Yeah, it will still find, it's like a big fish in there. It will still find some deceptive people.
Wow. There are probably, I imagine there are other scenarios where these things are used where we don't know, we're just going about our lives and it's been picked up on and found. And like you said, anyone walking through an airport, there's cameras on you, aren't there? And there's probably...
Well, the facial recognition stuff now has been operational for quite a while.
Yeah.
I went to a conference a couple of years back in London, and this facial recognition system was shown to me. And they said, right, we're going to tag you as a person of interest.
Okay.
And this was at London Olympia.
Right.
It's quite a big place, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then literally, I must have been 60, 70 yards, with hundreds of other people. And within seconds, it pinged me.
Really?
Straight away, yeah. So, I mean, it has got a massive practical application. I know there's other civil liberty issues for some people.
Yeah.
But it's frightening technology, really.
Yeah. Wow. Very
lots of news.
Very interesting. Given what you've described, all these signals that you're looking for, it seems to me that it would be almost impossible for someone to fully fake, if you know what you're looking for, to be able to hide. Like you said, you might be able to get your eye contact right or your voice right, but can you get your hands right at the same time and all that sort of stuff?
No, you're going to get caught out, and people have to say to me, journalists, "Oh, I bet you're a good liar." No, I'm not.
Right, okay.
Because if I trained you in this stuff, because I'm nobody special, because I do what I do, I've got the same physiology as you, the same neurology. I'm a human being. I'm not anything special. I'm just a person that's followed a passion. So if I spent 2 days with you, and then I made some statements, I would probably guarantee you'd be able to catch me out.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because it's not. Well, it's impossible to juggle. It's almost like, say a juggler's got 3 or 4 balls, a very proficient juggler, and then you ask them to suddenly juggle 10. The focus is so much on getting it right that everything else just goes snowblind. And it's the same with this stuff, and it's dependent upon the consequence as well. Okay. So, if I was working with you and say I stole your sandwich out of the fridge or something, and you go, "Did you take my sandwich down?" I go, "No."
Yeah.
Never saw it. I mean, or whatever. But if you say, "Oh, there's money gone out of the petty cash, like £200 gone missing," and I've done it, I'm going to make a very fast calculation in my mind. Am I going to admit this or defend it? Yeah. This is if I'm guilty. It's in that hesitancy that this we call cognitive overload happens, and it happens in literally a thousandth of a second. The person determines how they're going to respond. So if you said to somebody, I know you probably wouldn't be as blatant as this, but if you said to this person, did you take that money? Just be honest with me. If I'm innocent, I'd say, I've not touched the money. I'd come up with my own response. Yeah, because I'd be pretty offended. I'd say, look, I've not touched it. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm guilty, I would have no time to respond. Yeah, because I'm so under pressure not to be caught out. I say, no, of course I did not take the money. So I would mirror you, I would parrot your
using that language.
Gesture.
Okay.
And then what you'll also be aware of is a contraction in English language. So, no, I have not. Obviously, I haven't. No, I did not. No, I didn't. Clinton, I did not have relations with that woman, right?
Yeah.
So even that one sentence, we've got he's not used the contraction, and he used distancing language. Like with the Prince Andrew, I was the only guy that worked on the Prince Andrew interview. Okay. There must have been 150 red flags in that interview for deception, allegedly.
Allegedly.
So yeah, it's like you say, to manage all of that when we go into it. It's only because I've been doing this for so long. You know, it's like I couldn't come and do what you do in minutes, you know, what you've been doing for years.
Yeah.
And that's how I say to people that, you know, we're all unique in our own little cocoon. Just because, you know, I've just got good at what I do and continue to learn, really.
Yeah. So, yeah. And that must feel good in a way to think that people can't fully crack it, they can't fully deceive, they couldn't get trained enough to the point where they could, because I imagine if you could do that, you could potentially use that for a lot of very nefarious things.
Well, you could. I mean, that leads us really onto, so who can blag the system?
Okay.
And it's generally people with personality disorders.
Right.
People with what we call psychopathy.
Yeah.
So psychopaths. Not everyone that's a psychopath is a serial killer. All it means is that they've grown up, they've developed without the emotional part of their brain.
Yeah.
That, like they say that Trump's a psychopath.
Okay.
It's somebody that doesn't really consider you, not interested in how you feel. I want that candle that's behind you, and whether you're there or not, I'm having it. Right. So and then the sociopathy is somebody still wants it, but they do consider, or they're aware of the fact that they shouldn't knock somebody out of the way to get it. There's a moral element creeps in, whereas with like psychopathy, so within the lie detection stuff, and then we have things like narcissism. You know, there's this self-obsession. So people can beat the system. Okay. On occasion, if they've got if maybe they're on some sort of learning difficulty spectrum. So there is a faction of people that can and do. Don't conform to all the things that we've discussed. Interesting. So that can be difficult.
And I guess those are also, when you talk about psychopaths, also probably the people that you don't want to, like, if you wanted to be able to detect anyone, it would be them. So the idea that they can also get away with it, that's kind of scary.
But a lot of the people, I mean, the show that I'm in is looking at convicted killers, but a lot of these people, they're so innocuous. Right. You know, they're not these grandiose sort of Michael Myers characters. A lot of them are just, you wouldn't look at them twice. And that's how they kind of got away with it. Because if they were not that way, people might have... Yeah. Instinct would Ted Bundy, the famous killer in America, who was a lawyer. I think he just about qualified as a lawyer. The actual judge that sentenced him to death said, like, what a waste, right? You've got such an incredible mind. He says, I would not have minded you being an advocate in my court. Wow. He gave him that compliment, and he was about to sentence him to death. Wow. You know, and he used his... strange. It was just... I mean, Ted Bundy, he used to lure, like, university students into his van. He'd put, like, a false cast on. And because he'd say, can you help me? I'm trying to get this box in the van. And then once they were obviously outside, then he'd do what he did. But so, you wouldn't have looked at these people twice, really. And so they're super nice. That's scary. Creepy. I mean, how has it been? You mentioned around the stuff you've worked on recently and the various TV things around crime and some very scary people, even if they don't maybe outwardly look that way. What's that been like? Has it been, I imagine, fascinating, but also has it been a bit chilling going through some of this stuff? It is chilling, really. I mean, there's three main things I've done of late recently. One was India's biggest murder, where a husband and wife couple who were doctors, their daughter, and they had three servants as well. Their daughter and one of the servants had their throats slit overnight in their house. Wow. and the police kind of stomped in, ruined the crime scene.
Right.
And long story short, they were convicted of murder, and they eventually were acquitted because it was a very, very tenuous conviction.
Okay.
And I was asked to come in. There was a production company that were going to reinvestigate everything because they believed they were innocent.
Okay.
So I came in doing my bit, and they had forensic experts. And as a result of this documentary, I think the police reopened it because there were so many holes in it. Like, for example, it's online. It's I think it's Atwell, the name is. He put India's biggest double murder. Anyway, there was a big thing made of this, the mother's gesture, because they say that when people do this, it's defensive.
Okay.
Right. So when she was giving TV interviews after the murder, saying we're innocent, she kept going like this. Now, I think there were other body language experts that said, oh yeah, she's being defensive. Well, I was allowed to look at home video footage of photos long before the murder.
Yeah.
And even as a young child, the mother, Arushi, that's the child's name. If people Google murder Arushi, they'll get it. But even as a child, when she was 15, the mother, she was doing the same gesture. Okay. So for her, that was one of her baseline gestures. Right. So I was able to negate that straight away as being a red flag. And like I say, I was pleased to hear that they got sort of released and all the rest of it. And then I used to work on a thing called Crime Stories with Judge Rinder. And then one of the main stories I worked on there was with a guy called Phil Pott. Yeah. He was actually from the Midlands, where I was a policeman, and he was actually on Jeremy Kyle the year before, so people not aware of that show. It was like kind of a Jerry Springer type show in the UK, and he was on there as Britain's worst dad because he had like 15 kids and it didn't work or anything. But he had a wife and a mistress that lived in the caravan, and then they would take turns to live in the house, and very bizarre. But his wife left him, and he came up with a plan to set fire to the house. Then he would then go and rescue all the kids and then come out like some hero. But he didn't realise how fast the fire would take hold, and all of the kids died. Oh. So I was involved in the analysis of that sort of press conference and various other things. And then obviously right now on Apple TV and Amazon Prime, it's called Interrogation Secrets. I'm the main sort of body language guy on that show, where we look at, I think it's out of 2 seasons now, we look at some of, it's generally America's biggest killers. So we look at their interrogation tapes and their interview tapes, and we're able to, what I do is help the viewer decipher what's happening sort of internally with their emotions. So when they're being super nice, what we're really seeing is this ferociousness that they're kind of containing. But unless you know what to look for, you won't see that.
They're just putting a mask over of being nice. And from there, is there a particular example you think of, someone's gotten away with that, but there were loads of red flags, I'm sure that they were. I
think one of the most scariest people that I've analysed is a woman called Eileen Warnos. And she was America's biggest female serial killer. But if people, even to see a picture, you don't have to be an expert to see that, she was highly intelligent. Yeah. A highly intelligent person. But her eyes would just freak you out.
Right.
And she inferred that some police officers were crooked, and I believe that she was telling the truth. She says they knew that I was going out doing this. They let me carry on, and she named certain officers at the time, and so that whole. I'm not saying she was innocent because she clearly did it because she admitted it.
Right. Okay.
And the evidence was there, but I think a lot of what she said, which was dismissed, I believe was truthful. In terms of some of the cops were a little bit less than honourable.
Wow. So, is there someone, you've mentioned some examples of types of people that are sometimes hard to detect. Is there someone you can think of that you would say, you think that person is a very good liar, where perhaps, I don't know, maybe you watched them for a while and then you picked up on something at some point and think, oh wow, they're actually masking this and this has come out. Is there anything come to mind?
You've got to mention Boris, haven't you? He's not a particularly good liar because it's one of the only people, like if I was Boris and you said, you're lying, aren't you? Well, yeah. He doesn't even front it out. That's all the way through lockdown.
Yeah.
I was writing analysis like Matt Hancock long before they all came out.
Yeah.
I was, he had more red flags than a Chinese circus. Really.
So it didn't surprise you at all when there were lockdown parties and things like that came out?
Even now, they're going through it all. Some of it, when a lot of them were doing, even in the midst of lockdown, they were saying certain things. I thought that's just not true.
Right, okay.
Do you know what I mean? But unfortunately, the press was so focused on pushing the narrative that never got out.
That you were very much shouting against the tide there if you were trying to
I think for me, one of the most honourable people during that period was Dominic Raab, the deputy, because I think he was also delivering information he didn't believe in. But I think he was quite an honourable person at the time, because there were certain gestures and signatures he was demonstrating, which weren't consistent with a person wholly happy to be saying these certain things in terms of statistics and numbers and things like that.
Right.
So really? I do think, for me, I think some of those numbers don't stack up in the way they were delivered.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of implications and ramifications, and that stuff's being investigated and coming out now.
So we've got to say too much, but
I know what you mean. Yeah. Okay. Do you think that there are things that can have happened in people's past that would make them better at detecting body language? Like, I've heard the phrase of people who were bullied as a kid, for example, might read people a little bit better because they sort of learnt to pick up on the signs early so they could get themselves out of a sticky situation. Is there any truth to that?
I think certainly if people have gone through trauma, or maybe been in sort of domestic violence relationships, or anything where they've had to really get in touch with themselves internally, I think they do. And in fact, a lot of therapists come from a traumatic background. People go to trauma and bereavement counselling, things like that. They've come from a very traumatic past. So I think that's a great observation. I think definitely so.
There could be something in that. So I wanted to talk to you about lies in marketing. Obviously, marketing is my background, and everyone knows that there are lies in marketing. Of course, yeah. I mean, it's even me just being in the industry. There are some things that people will say, "Oh, I bought such and such product because of this claim," and I can go, "Well, that like the way they worded that is clever, but it's nonsense." Yeah. Statistics that have this can get you up to, and you're like, well, up to followed by a number means they could get you none, and it would still be a truthful claim. What are your thoughts around that in general, like lies in marketing, and do you find yourself picking up on things and think that's a load of nonsense?
I mean, there was a statistic on the Jeremy Kyle show that said the polygraph is up to 99% accurate.
Right, yeah.
I think for most people, I think in advertising, especially PR, I think they kind of know there's an element of poetic license. I mean, certainly in America, they're not strict at all. I mean, even whatever goes on in this country, we're still very strictly regulated in terms of what can be advertised. But certainly stuff in America that I saw when I lived in the States, you're like, that's just not true. You can't say that. You know what I mean? Like really silly. I can't think of any specific
example, but
ridiculous
you see a lot
stuff. Take this pill and you'll, I don't know, lose so much weight in a day or something. I think most reasonable people would assume that not being lied to, but there's a degree of
some exaggeration. Yeah. I think so. Just thinking on that point, because obviously in a lot of marketing, people will hire actors to then deliver the marketing message, and I guess it'd be difficult to tell whether that's a lie or not because the actor's just been fed some information they don't know. Are actors good liars, or does that make a difference?
Another great question. Yeah, I know I've got quite a few friends who are professional actors. Yeah, I mean that's another faction that I forgot to mention, that if they associate into that role or associate into that belief system, so there's something called visual motor rehearsal.
Okay.
And there used to be, when Beckham was in his prime, there was a European manager that Sven-Goran Eriksson brought in, and he specialised in this. And it was basically, if you imagine yourself up there on a big cinema screen, being at your best, so it could be marketing, it could be playing the piano, it could be playing football. If you imagine that time and time again, and then you imagine yourself stepping into, so you associate into that version of you, then there's something very powerful happens psychologically. So by the same token, if you mentally rehearse, so if you knew you were going into a situation where you're going to be interviewed by the police or something that's going to cause you, stress and anxiety, if you sort of create this best version of you, and then you psychologically step into that person, it's almost like trying on a different set of clothes. Your mind, body, and outward gestures, and what we call leakage, they will all remain consistent with the belief system. And the brain will always seek out evidence to support that. So effectively, yes, is the answer, that people that are very good at acting, method actors, they could be polygraphed, they could beat the system.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, obviously. It's basically their job to professionally lie in a sense, to be convincing.
Well, it's adverts, I'm Dr. such. No, you're not. I'm a dentist. No, you're not. I've just seen you on Spotlight. You know what I mean? I'm just...
Yeah. So we talked about being involved in deal making and the potential applications for what you've done outside of the media work and interviews and things like that. If someone wants to, trying to think how to phrase this, if someone wants to use some techniques themselves, and let's say they're trying to detect dishonesty, they're trying to detect if someone's lying, or perhaps there could be something else where they're maybe trying to assess someone's personality, if they are a dishonest person in general. What could be like some simple things that someone could take away and go?
Well, one of the things that's really powerful in this is a thing called sensory acuity. So sensory acuity is really making an effort to not just look at a person and listen, but really set an intention. So intention drives attention.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes people that are watching, they may think, where's my phone? And the phone's in front of them, but because they've been preoccupied, they don't see the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had it where I've had sunglasses on my head.
Yeah.
And I've gone, where's my sunglasses? I even, this is crazy. I was on the phone the other day and I was like, where's my phone gone? And I'm like, oh, you're right, you idiot. So it can go. So sensory acuity. So if I was, say, teaching you, I'd say, look at my eyes to start off with. So where do I look with my eyes? What's my normal blink rate? So just off the cuff, in the space of, say, 15 seconds, how many times do I blink?
Yeah.
And, I'm looking sort of down and right quite a lot, because that's why I tend to respond from is my sort of feelings and gut instinct.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's a gesture that I know is my pattern. So it's by learning how to first take a baseline from somebody. So set an intention. Even today, as you watch this, say, right, if I go to a coffee shop or anywhere where there's people at work, I'm just going to pick one thing and I'm going to set the intention in my mind just to kind of gauge where they are. So, notice how certain people are comfortable looking you in the eye. If someone that you work with or know, or that is in your family, is not comfortable looking you in the eye, again, it doesn't mean they're a liar. It means that's normal for them.
Yeah.
So it's almost like getting a bespoke suit rather than buying something off the cuff or off the internet. You'll be looking at this person's very specific and personal gestures. So really, eyes, blink rate, and looking at their posture. How animated are they? Do they speak quite quickly, or are they quite slow? So once you've got that and you've mastered that ability or got to a certain level of competency, you could say to somebody, oh, there's a great kids game that I heard the other day. I did this with Amanda Holden, and it's literally you get them to hold a coin and they put their hands in front of them and say, right, say yes both times, right? So one will be truth, one will be lies, but say yes both times. So say it's in this hand. You'll say, tell me that you've got the coin in this hand. And they'll go, I've got the coin in this hand. And say, now say the same thing. And what you'll notice, because you've done your training with sensory acuity, there'll be some very subtle difference. Now, one of the things that people do without even knowing it is when they try to lie to you, like, yes, it's here, they'll either tilt their nose or move their neck very, very subtly, unconsciously.
Almost like a tiny nose signal.
Because they want to give it away.
Wow.
Or their voice pitch may change, or maybe you're looking for the most subtlest of things.
And it's things that are different to the norm. That's the biggest tell in these various different things that you can look at.
So you could try this right now. You get your friends or family and just try this.
Yeah.
And then you'll say to them, right, now put your hands behind your back. You can keep it in the same hand or change hands, and then we'll do it for real now. So they'll bring the hands forward, right? And again, you say yes both times. Is it here? Yes. Is it here? Yes. So now you can say to them, so now you're going to tell me the truth or you're going to lie to me, right? So they'll say, it's in my left hand, it's in my right hand. And if you did that, like a coin toss, if you did that, maybe 20, 30 times, every time you'll see something that you didn't see previously. Right. And you'll get pretty consistent at it. And that's a really good way of measuring your own level of sensory acuity.
Right, so it really, all in relation to the baseline is the thing to be aware of. So I've been conscious, as I said, I was speaking to you, I would never normally think about that I've been relatively busy with my left hand, which I'm sure you've noticed. I've had it like on the side of my face quite a bit. I've been fiddling with the buttons on my top. Would you say that that's probably just baseline for me to do those things?
Yeah,
that
definitely.
Doesn't necessarily tell anything?
No, not at all, yeah. So again, it's what's comfortable.
Yeah.
When that person's in a relaxed state, what's normal for them.
Yeah. And I likely do these things anyway.
Yeah, so I've got somebody that's just like a weatherman. You know, they're really all over the place. And they're like that nice, but like Lee Evans almost, a comedian, you know, he's very animated. So, you know, for most people, that would be abnormal. But for them, that's how they are.
So I guess one of my next questions, but maybe answered given that, is it harder to detect if people are lying from other cultures or if they're drunk? But I guess because you're trying to put together almost like a bespoke baseline for them, even if someone's from a different culture and they have different gestures or different tonality, you can still identify when it's differed from the norm. Absolutely.
I mean, again, you brought in a great topic. Is majority of the things that we've discussed so far are all cross-cultural.
Yeah.
So a guy called Paul Ekman, who was the scientist on a show about 10 years ago called Lie to Me with Tim Roth, which used to be on, and this was he used to work for the FBI and all that sort of stuff. So obviously a lot more kind of dramatic than what the stuff that I do, like Love Island. But basically the Paul Ekman research was all based around, a lot of it was the facial expressions, called micro-expressions. So we discovered that no matter where you go in the world, no matter what culture you're from, there's 43 muscles in the face, right? And so we generally only demonstrate those 8 emotions. Right. So even people that have been blind since birth, disgust will still be.
Really?
Now, when I do training, I slow it right down, but they're literally a fifth of a second. So you
just
know,
the little flinch, little.
So I mean, there was a great one last month. I went somewhere for something, and I was getting a coffee in this car. I was doing some training for a company, and then one of them had just got promoted over the other one, and one says, "Oh, congratulations, babe! I'm really pleased for you." And I was like, "You're lying your ass off." I didn't say anything. I thought, you two-faced. But they're like the best of mates. Wow. They both went for the job, you see.
Yeah.
So she became her manager then. But I was like...
Not happy for her in the slightest.
So, but the thing with this is, again, some people don't want to know. Like, if I knew someone's partner's cheating, I'm not going to suddenly go up and say, "Oh, by the way, blah, blah, blah." Some people don't want to know.
Yeah.
So it's... I mean, sometimes you get placed in a precarious position because I had a very good friend and I did know that something was going on. And I played it this way because she kind of thought, she said, "We have a word with him, will you read him for me?" And I said, "I don't really do this, for friends." But this particular person was in a certain job where they were going away for like 6 weeks at a time. Like on the oil rigs or something. And they were coming back. Every 6 weeks they'd come back. 6 weeks? Yeah. So every 6 weeks they'd come back for 2 weeks.
Right.
So anyway, she'd picked up certain things when he was home, like he'd be in the toilet and he'd be on WhatsApp and things like that. And a few other things that she'd picked up on. So anyway, she was always ready to meet you, like he'd be watching on YouTube and stuff. And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." So he says to me, "Oh, have you been working on anything interesting?" So I said, yeah, definitely. Now, what I did was I fed him a story, and I'll say it, then it'll make sense. So I said to him, yeah, I'm working on a case at the moment, actually, where a woman's cheating on her husband. And I said to her, "Be honest, you're cheating on her left, right and centre, aren't you?" And he went, "What?" I went, "No, that's what I said to them." But neurologically, his defences, his nervous system took that as a direct thing. So obviously there was like blinking, that went to pale, that white as a sheet straight away.
Wow.
So for example, like we shook hands when we started this interview. If this was a police interview and then we shake hands again, if your hands drops by 2 or 3 degrees in temperature, then I know that you've had a dramatic shift in emotion. So his hand was stone cold from when I shook his hand a few minutes before. I went, no, I said, "You misunderstand me, that's what I said to her."
But it was.
I know, I didn't, it eventually unravelled of his own volition. So even handshakes, again, I want to stress, these things can also be applied if someone's going through a lot of stress. So, you know, on the HR front, for example, I sat in on some disciplinaries with an HR person as a silent observer, and this person thought this person was really taking the mickey with the sickness levels. Now, she was a bit gung-ho, this HR person, and I think she was kind of run before she could walk, because she was like, yeah, but Darren, he's done this, she's done this and she's done that and she did this. Yeah, I said, there's something more going on here. But it transpired she was a victim of domestic violence.
Oh, okay.
So the reason why she was displaying these shifts in emotion is because, so if I said to you now, you know, think back to a time in the past that was really upsetting, I don't want you to break that pattern, but that's like a hypnotic language pattern. The brain is going to go back to that time in the past and it will evoke those emotions. Do you see what I'm saying? So by her saying, well, what's going on? Why is this and why is this happening? She's getting her to go back into that place she doesn't want to go to. Yeah. So she'll outwardly leak that emotion.
But it wasn't necessarily for the reason that you thought it was in that scenario.
Yeah. So that's what I always stress is, please, please, please don't just jump in with it. I've been doing this a long time and I still get it wrong. Yeah. So, you know, be very, very careful, because you can ruin friendships. It's not a game, it's not a trick. I'm not a magician. I'm not David Copperfield. You can ruin relationships with this stuff. Yeah. I mean, one quick story about this was a few years ago I treated myself to a decent car, and my friend had come round for a bit of a catch up. Anyway, I've got a lot of cameras where I live, and I came out in the morning. Somebody keyed my car, black car, all the way down. So I was like, so I checked the cameras. Yeah. It was him. Really? So I rang up. I go, we'll call him Rob. I said, all right, Rob. I said, did you have a good night last night? Yeah, it was a good catch up, wasn't it? Yeah, let's do it again. Why'd you keep my car, mate? I says, number one, please don't. Yeah. I do this for a living. Number two, I've got it on camera. I said, I've just been to a certain car showroom. It's going to cost like $2,000 to fix, which you're going to pay for. Well, I've got a mate who can do it. No, that's going to be fixed, or I'm going to have you arrested. I said, why? I couldn't help myself. So you know, sometimes like these things blindside you. Yeah. And this is somebody I'd known 20 years.
And he was going to try and lie to you, of all people.
Yeah. But the fact it was on camera as well. Like, I said, you know what? Like, people that truly know me, I'm a very humble person and I'd help anybody. Yeah. You know, and I'm, you know, and even though I do what I do, I'm extremely privileged. I don't take it for granted. You know, and the fact you've asked me here, you know, I'm truly grateful. So I love meeting different people. But yeah, for someone to do that really shocked me.
Are there things to look out for if you're trying to detect jealousy? Is there a, you know, you mentioned like disgust, where you get that sort of like little flinch in the middle of the face. Is there a...
I think generally people they'll overtly say, oh, I hope that happens. Like I heard somebody saying, oh, I'm moving soon. This person was like, oh, good luck with that. But again, there was a bit of a contempt, which is... Okay. Yeah. Trump does that a lot. It's what we call a bilateral smile. Sorry, my voice is going up. I'm lying.
I didn't pick up on it.
What we say in every 10 minutes of conversation, the average person will tell 3 lies. Wow. So I must have lied to you about 30 times by now. It won't feel right, you know, and that's the best way I can describe it. And these things that I teach, that backs up your gut instinct. Really, it's a measurable way of backing up what you think is going on. And they say if there's a doubt, there is no doubt, I think.
If someone's a terrible liar, like my wife is a terrible liar, I can always tell, and she gets really frustrated because and it'd only be innocent white lies, right? Yeah. It'd be, you know, I'd be like, you were out buying me a Christmas present or something like that. And she's like, yeah, I was. How did you know? I can always tell. Does that say something about her personality that I can always tell?
Well, I just think, again, because you obviously, you know, you're very close with each other.
So I have such a good baseline.
Yeah, basically, you've got such strong rapport, such a strong, deep connection. That's why, generally, you know, like our parents especially, you know, as a kid, you know, you could never lie to your parents. Yeah. And even as you grow up, you know, even if you're in your 30s or 40s, you know, it's like, you know, I know you're lying because they know you inside out. Yeah. So I think what these techniques allow you to do is have the same level of rapport with somebody maybe in 10 minutes that you enjoy with your parents that you've known all your life. So that's really the explanation, is that you know each other inside out so closely, or you know her, that well, that you can spot straight away. So that's the beauty of it, is that you're already doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Just because I've got such a good baseline from
So all you need to do is
10 years
apply that out there, and you'll be doing it as well.
You'll be able to use it. Yeah. Okay. So you've built, one of the things I'm really interested in marketing in general is personal brands, and you've built a personal brand within this lie detection body language expert space, which is very unique. Like, I've built myself a personal brand, but I'm following a trodden path. I have a marketing agency, I do media work. This is like a known path. I imagine what you've had to do is very much go out and make your own path. There's not that one to follow.
I mean, I get a lot of people messaging me from all over the world and saying, I'm doing psychology and I want to do what you do. And I'm like, well, there is no real track. There's no course. I mean, what I do is there are elements of traditional psychology. I've studied sort of the NLP. I've done stage hypnosis. I've done clinical hypnotherapy, the micro-expression training, statement analysis, 20 years in the police. So, it's almost like it's a bespoke thing that I've kind of created for myself. And there've been times when I thought, should I reinvent myself? There've been times when things haven't been going so well, where I've not had work. Sometimes, because you work for yourself, it's not easy. Yeah. Certainly through lockdown, that was a very difficult period. But really, that is. So I lost my thread there, but essentially, it's. I've stuck to it. I've stuck to one thing. I've got friends that I've maybe got 10 different things on the go. Yeah. And I'm saying, look, the reason you've not probably succeeded in that is because you give up too easily. There's history's littered with stories of people that have persevered. I'm ultimately still not where I want to be, but thank whoever, I'm in a sort of comfortable position now. Sort of, this is like coming up to my 15th year in media now. Wow. 14th year working in mainstream media. So, I'm just again immensely grateful. But all I could do is just follow your passion, no matter what it is. If it's what I'm doing, there's enough work out there. There's plenty of people out there calling themselves Human Lie Detector in America. Right. There's somebody got that brand as well. I mean, I've got a close friend called Susan Constantine who does what I do in America, and we talk, and we, if we can, we give each other leads, and help each other out. But you're quite right. It's not been easy, but I've just stuck to my guns really, and it seems to have worked. And really, certainly in the UK, I've privileged now to be the main person that journalists and people with PR campaigns tend to come to. Yeah,
and I obviously in doing the research for this interview, I saw you've been on tons of various media outlets, TV shows, and things like that. What does the future hold along those lines? Is it more of what you've been doing? You have your own social channels, but it seems from what I see like you do more on other media as opposed to your own social stuff. Is that going to continue?
That's a great question. You asked some good questions, actually. One of the things I want to do now is build up my YouTube content as well, because one of the things that I get is, I can't believe you've only got like 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers. But because I've been focused on mainstream television for 12, 13 years. So next year I've got a second book coming out called To Be Honest With You. Yeah. It's called that because statistically, most people tend to say that phrase just because they lie to you, just before they lie to you, because it's like the phrase with the greatest of respect.
Yeah, and then there's no respect, or no offence, and then they say something offensive.
Or no offence.
Yeah.
But so that's coming out. I'm doing sort of book signings with that, and then I'm doing a UK tour. I think from March. So you guys are welcome to come around the UK, and that's kind of an interactive live evening. Oh, fun. I'll be coming all over the place. And then what else? I've got a couple of other side projects on the go. I've got my cousin who's in Kent, who's a pilot. We're doing a around the world charity flight, which I'm petrified about because it's a 2-man aircraft. So I've got. That
sounds scary and amazing all at the same time.
I'm petrified. I'm not scared to fly, but the aircraft's quite small.
How long will that take?
I think we're going to do it in 3 weeks because there's certain waypoints.
Yeah.
So we'll obviously stop every few hours and stuff. But
that'd be amazing.
So not taking my foot off the gas with this stuff, but I'm looking at maybe doing other things as well. And again, music being my first passion. I still play piano to this day, so looking at maybe doing a few things musically, if only for my own
well,
benefit.
I see a lot of people, if they have a musical background, sometimes they manage to work that into live show type setups and things along those lines. Which
you might have seen me on some crime show playing the piano, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, because my background is all around like the social media side of things, and I could see your content just doing so well.
Yeah.
And not that things when you're on mainstream media and interviews and they always get tons of views and things like that, and I can absolutely see why. Like, imagine what you talk about doing so well, being able to analyse, well-known people, even like on a platform like YouTube, for example, analysing other content creators and being like, they've said that, but I don't think they believe what they've just said there.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
There's massive scope. So
well.
Certainly a lot more social media stuff, I think, next year.
Yeah. Fab. And if people want to reach you, what's your where would you like to send them?
Okay, so Twitter's just at Darren Stanton.
Yeah.
Instagram's TV Human Lie Detector #1. And then I'm on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook. But I don't tend to use Facebook that often now. But generally, sort of, Twitter. What else? Yeah, just Google Human Lie Detector.
And you'll pop up on all the various places, and they can follow you and see the stuff that you'll be working on.
Yeah,
which,
and if I can
really
offer any help or support or advice to anybody that's watching, please feel free to get in touch.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. Really interesting. I've never spoken to someone who works in your field before, so there's a lot of new stuff to learn. So that's much appreciated.
No, it's been a pleasure, and that's the truth.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Fab. So what did you think of my conversation with the Human Lie Detector? Comment below. Let's get a discussion started. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and you can watch another one of my videos right here.